And then I will record your presentation so we can go back and revert to it. So you should be able to share your screen now, Nancy.
Okay. So when we think about doing a Just Faith program, like your group, we have our steering committee from our Faith in Action ministry gets together and talks about what we want to do, which program we think would be good to offer. And then we start with kind of the basics, which include how many classes are we going to do in that, or how many are we going to try to do? So that what we've found is that we seem to have an audience for daytime classes and for evening classes. And so if we have enough people who are willing to facilitate a daytime class and then another set of facilitators for the evening class, that's what we have been doing with the racial justice program, is having two, one on Wednesday morning and one on Thursday evening. And that has worked well. We're in our we just started our third module of the racial justice series. And we pretty much have had very good retention through that program. We have picked up some new people in the second session. We lost a couple from the first session. And the third session is kind of a combination of those two. Plus we have some people from some other parishes that are participating with us. So that's kind of the at other times we have just offered one time, and it's usually been an evening time, especially when we were doing in person. We did an evenings. It seems in some ways to have more sessions is easier on Zoom for us. And that's just, it's going to depend at each location, what works and what doesn't work best. So then, now we have, in the past, we always had done in person. The Faith and Racial Justice has been our first virtual. And so in the future, we will have to make a decision. Will we offer virtual? Will we offer in person? Will we offer some kind of hybrid of those two? What we have found with the virtual, which surprised me, a couple of things surprised me. I was very nervous about it because it was just sort of, everybody had to learn new things about doing things in Zoom and everything else. But what we found was that we have people who are able to participate with us who we would never see in person. And that includes young families. We have a couple of sets of couples who are able to participate because, if one needs to step away to put a child to bed or whatever, they can do that because they're home. They don't have to find a babysitter to come and those kinds of things. The other set are older people who don't want to drive at night anymore. And when we just offered evening classes, then they would be precluded because they didn't want to have to drive to the church at night. So there are definitely, from that standpoint, there are definitely advantages for the virtual. The other advantage for the virtual is that we have former parishioners who have moved away, and they still receive information. They still receive our flock note communication from the parish by their choice. And they've signed up and participated. So we have people from different parts of the state. We don't have anybody out of state right now, but it wouldn't preclude us from having someone who's out of state that is familiar with, the parish and wants to participate in a program that we're offering. plus through Meg. I mean, Meg always has the information on what we're doing. When there are other people in the Bay Area in particular who are looking for an opportunity to participate, we are, unless we are, have so many people, which we haven't had, that we can't handle them, we're always open to having people from other parishes, other congregations of any kind, or not even a congregation if they don't have to belong to a church, if they want to participate in the program. So that's also, I think, an advantage of the virtual for us, is that we've had some voices that we wouldn't otherwise have heard, including a couple of parishes who were looking at the program to see whether it was something that they would be interested in bringing to their own parish. And this last time we were fortunate to have a priest from a parish in San Francisco who was looking at it, and was just a really delightful addition to our Thursday night session. So, I mean, it's going to be a choice for us in the future. We're currently continuing with the virtual format for this last module of faith and racial justice. But in the future, we'll have to make some decisions about how we want to proceed. And then, of course, we get whatever program we're going to use. And then this is not necessarily sequential. I just tried to organize it in groups that made sense to me. Recruiting facilitators is something that we will do before we promote. And at least to the extent that we know that we have 2 facilitators for each session. We don't have to do more than that to have the commitment. But if I am personally a little reluctant just to trust that we've put a group together and we're going to find somebody in the group that wants to facilitate. So I want to make sure that we have at least people who are going to be able to help make this the class successful. And part of the reason that I am a little leery about not having facilitators in advance is because several years ago, when we had a change in staff and our the adult faith formation staff person retired, and we were still doing the JustFaith, the original JustFaith modules, and we launched a class that was pretty good size. I think there were about 14 or 16 people, and they had to, we had to get facilitators out of that group, and there wasn't somebody who had already had some experience facilitating. And without our staff person, who was sort of the mentor to these groups, it was more difficult for that group than any of the other groups that we've taken through our program. So that was like a learning for us, those of us who are volunteers who are keeping it going, that we really need to, if we're going to launch a group and they're going to raise their own facilitators from internally, we need to really be mentors to the group to make sure that any problems that they're running into, or just to be cheerleaders to keep them going, and that. So when we're doing these now, we like to make sure that we've got a couple of people who are going to facilitate and who already know what they're doing, have gone through a Just Faith program before. And that usually comes out of our Faith in Action ministry, people who have been through. I find it most successful to recruit facilitators by personal invitation. Just putting out an email and saying, who's interested in facilitating this, usually is a large silence on the other end of that email. But when asked, most of the time people are willing to do it. If they're not, they're perfectly free to say no for any reason. They don't have to give me a reason. They just aren't prepared to do it this time. We also, when we promote the class, we will ask anyone who is signing up if they're interested. And a couple of times we have gotten people who wanted to facilitate from that. And they're usually people who have facilitation experience, either because they've been teachers or they have it from some other aspect of their personal life and are not afraid of what that word means. So that's one of the things that we do. And I try to give the facilitators as much support as I can so that it's easy for them to do what they need to do in the sessions. So they get registered on the JustFaith website. And then we have a Pre-Facilitator Meeting where we'll come together and we'll talk about how are all the facilitators, how are they going to work together? How are we going to divide up the sessions? How many, are we going to, is some person going to do the whole thing? Are they going to do half and half? Do we want to involve everybody in every session? And we've had every variation of that. I try to get as many facilitators as I can. And for the faith and racial justice classes, I have 4 facilitators for our Wednesday class. Excuse me. And this session, I actually have 6 facilitators for my Thursday night class. And because with Zoom, you have so much of the breakout, we want to make sure that there's somebody who's responsible in each of the breakouts for facilitating, excuse me, making sure that if there are questions that the group is going to be discussing or anything like that, that somebody there has kind of got the lead on that. 6 is the most I've ever had. And it's also the great thing about it is that people can take nights off. So we usually do, when we do facilitators, we usually do a facilitator takes the first part up to the break, and then a different facilitator takes the second part after the break to the completion. And on most sessions, that works really well. On the first and last session, we usually involve more facilitators, just first session, just so everybody kind of gets to see who the facilitators are. Last session, just to kind of tie things up. But in between, we usually do it that way. So with 4, then, you get a night off every other week where you just have to be a participant. And with 6, you get a night off every two nights off every 2 weeks. So doing the facilitator meetings helps to keep the group together, and also to get everybody have an ability to be able to contribute to how the session should go. And everybody has good ideas. And so as a result of that, if we're planning a particular session and it requires, certain kinds of activities, then people have ideas about what's the best way to do it. Generally speaking, I just empower the facilitator. If you're the first half, you decide how you want to do it. If you have, I'm here to support you if you have questions about how it might work. Many of our facilitators have facilitated multiple times with, again, the faith and racial justice. I've invited people who have been participants the first time to become facilitators for the second session. And so we make sure that for those, we provide facilitator training, which is, usually us talking with them and answering their questions, but also referring them to the JustFaith videos on their website. They have some really good videos on just general facilitation. And then they also have they have a very specific video training for the faith and racial justice session. And they're always available to help at the office there to help answer any questions that, a facilitator might have, or a situation that a facilitator might run into. If we can't help ourselves, we can always reach out to them for help. And then what we do as we go through the sessions we'll join like the meeting like 15 minutes before it starts. And we'll just check in as facilitators and make sure that now everybody has looked at what they're going to be doing, does anybody have any questions? Are we clear? Are we doing breakouts for this? Are we not? Who's showing what material and so on? And then after the meeting, we'll stay on for 10 or 15 minutes and we'll look at the next session and make decisions as to who's going to pick which portions of it. So that's kind of the general sense of support that we provide for the facilitators. I'll pause there. Anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask on that part? Yeah.
This is Mary, and I do have a question. Mary T, not Mary O. We've got two Marys here. On the facilitator side of it, how many, when you say how many people that you have, did they go through JustFaith prior to the racial, the three racial
No.
justice equity? So this is their first introduction to JustFaith.
Yeah, I would, the facilitators, I would say that, well, the first session that we did with faith and racial justice, we did use people the facilitators were people who wanted to participate, who had facilitated before, either the original JustFaith or a different one. We've done other Just Matters modules. So they were all people who had facilitated before. Now, let me take that back. Just when I say that, I have to think about it.
But in general.
Yeah, we actually had two that hadn't.
Okay.
You know, they did fine. They were with other people so they could ask their questions. And they did the training. They looked at the training from JustFaith, and that helped to give them a sense of confidence as well.
And the facilitators are doing both the Zoom electronical side of it, techie stuff with the videos and everything as well.
Not generally, unless they're really comfortable with it and want to do it. I have been doing that so that they are free to just focus on the session.
Okay.
And most of them are more comfortable with that. There are a couple of people who'd like to show their own, they're very comfortable with Zoom, and they like to show their own, you know, any material that needs to be shared, they like to show it themselves.
Okay, thank you.
But mostly, I think having someone who even if your facilitators are also being doing the Zoom. Other people that I've talked to who have had two facilitators, they've had somebody do the Zoom for the time that they weren't facilitating,
Right.
and then they'd switch.
Right.
Just so, because it can get to be a little bit crazy when you're trying to present something and you're trying to set up a breakout and the slide needs to change and you're in the middle of, you know, so it's
Right.
really helpful to have somebody else who's doing that for you while you're actually facilitating the material.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Which of those JustFaith programs in your experience are the easiest sell? And I'm asking that because, you know, we're trying to get you expand our reach of the JustFaith group, and I know the racial justice might be a little bit harder sell than, you know, the phase one of JustFaith that this group started with way back when. What is your experience?
That's a really hard question to answer because we've had really good experience on the topical Just Matters programs of having people respond. Like we did immigration, the module on immigration, and there were, you know, we had about 30 something like that number of people who took that module. And most of those people were people who were not part of our Faith in Action group or people who had taken a previous JustFaith class. they were interested in this topic of immigration, and they wanted to learn more about it through their faith lens. And I think that's the same thing with the faith and racial justice. I think we have had the same kind of experience with that. On the other hand, we've had probably 60 or more people over time who have gone through the Just Faith original, which we haven't offered actually in quite a while, because it's intended to be that continuous, do 1, then do 2, then do 3. And that was kind of a long commitment. Now they've kind of broken it up more so that you can treat it as, do the first session and that could be all that you do. So I don't know. I think it kind of depends on your parish. You probably have a better idea about that. I mean, like, if you have a lot of people who are involved in, say, outreach with feeding people or whatever, maybe the module on hunger would be, one that would resonate and would not be too threatening. Or if your group is really environmentally oriented, the one on the environment might be, not threatening. So I think you really, you probably are better experts at what might be easier in your parish to attract people to than I might be. And I don't know if Meg wants to comment because she has experience with a whole bunch of parishes.
Well, yeah, but Nancy's advice is well said. Maybe a short survey that kept it to 5 topics is something you could entertain in the next couple summer months. Let me update you all though too. This is fairly fluid, but it's looking positive. This really just happened this morning. I met with Father Leo, who's the head of the racial task force here in the diocese. And as you may know, there are about 20 people, 16 lay people and 4 priests on it. The point is, Father Leo is pushing for the diocese and the bishop to consider pushing Just Faith, the faith and racial series in the parishes, just so you're aware of this. And so we met. He's going to, it's not published yet, so you are all the first to hear this, so it's not for sure, but he's confident the bishop wants to do whatever needs to be done. There are 81 parishes. Frankly, if he got 20 parishes to agree to do this, I'd just be thrilled. So that being said, if that makes, if the diocese proclaims this, parishioners in your parish may choose to take that series. But yes, hunger is a non-threatening one. The other one that is quite nurturing, but also addresses Catholic social teaching and people living on the margins, is engaging spirituality. It has been revamped since perhaps when Nancy took it or I took it. It's gotten great reviews. I love this course because it is an introduction to Catholic social teaching, and it involves some meditation, some letters from renowned or not so renowned activists, so that it's meant to be, and you do your own journaling and so on. So it's a little different flavor than what you've had. But the environment, we also have 2 new environment programs. So this takes a little, I won't, just one more minute. It takes a little bit work on your part, but I would go back to the Just Faith web and look at all the programs and see what they are. If you sign up for them, they'll send you an overview for free. You know, it's no, you don't have to register. But this is such a great group, Nancy, where they're already all active on this, but they're good researchers and community organizers themselves. And I will say they had, just so you know, they rotated amongst them. Most of them took turns doing facilitation with Christoph's, help on the technical. And so everything you said really makes sense to me in terms of sustainability. Having 6 facilitators is wonderful, because then, but it's a variation on what St. Perpetua's has done. So, it's going to be a little bit of research on your part, but maybe I have more confidence in the Faith and Racial series not being as threatening as you might think, but maybe that's me. And maybe I don't know. But that's where a survey at your parish might come in handy and see how they respond. Okay, I'm done. Yeah.
It's Mary Olowin talking now. This Wednesday at our town hall, there's going to be a presentation by the Social Justice Committee on racial equity. And I think the attendance, just the sheer numbers of people who show up for the town hall, will help give us a sense of how well that would fly.
Yeah.
I just want to share one more thing. The other person who was on our call with Father Leo today was the director of Just Faith, Susie Tierney. And she said something today that I've heard before. When Susie and I, and many of you have taken the original 24, 30 weeks, because you really were doing it in 8-week segments. Those of us who took it a while back always felt that the impact was huge, that there was something about meeting for a whole year that really bonded the group. And what we were worried about is that these 8-week topical programs might not result in that bonding. And so Susie said nationwide, these 8-week programs in the Faith and Racial series, most likely because of what our country is going through right now as well, the impact is as great. They're seeing people do things after these 8 weeks or 24 weeks of Faith and Race that they are seeing us do in the past. That this transformed your life, that you are doing something now pretty significant that you weren't doing.
Anything else, or should we move on? Okay. The next kind of groupings of things that I put together were the promotion. So now we've decided what we're going to do. We've got people, we've got the structure in place to make it happen. Then it becomes, okay, now we have to get people who want to participate in this. So how do we promote? Clearly we, put together promotion material. And I like to, and we like to try that, put that material in a way that people can get a pretty good sense of what they're getting involved in. Because this is unlike most other things that we do in the parish, for sure. I mean, we have, groups that do, what do they call themselves? Faith Cafe, and they pick faith topics, and they may stay on the same topic for multiple weeks, but it's really is kind of, you come to something, you watch a video, you break up in groups and you talk about it, you go home, and that's sort of it. But Just Faith is a real commitment to all the work that you're going to do between the sessions. And so we like to try, without scaring people away, we like to try to put together material that gives them a sense that they're not just signing up for this kind of a lightweight, come if you feel like it, don't come if you don't feel like it situation. Things that are helpful with that, can't do that as easily in the bulletin, but most of our communication these days are through our flock notes, emails that go out to the parishioners, and our website. And so the promotional material will have links to the schedule, which not only shows the dates, but what the topics for each of the weeks, and a little blurb about what that topic is going to be discussing. The books that we'll be reading, and also to JustFaith videos. So in the case, JustFaith has a really good video, which I think you probably, they put it in the modules now, I notice, that just talks about what is JustFaith, what will you experience by being in a JustFaith program. So we like to have that available so that people can kind of get a sense of what is it they're going to be signing up for. And then they also had, for the faith and racial justice, they had a kind of an intro video that we linked to in the material or in, like I say, in the emails. So we try to give them as much information as we can without overwhelming them. It's up to them when they want to look at it or not. But then we distribute it through, I'll always say this, personal invitations are the best. So if we are in other groups and whatever is, and you have conversations with people, that they might be kind of interested, or maybe they're looking for something to get involved in, putting out the invitation is a very effective way. That brings some people in, but you're not going to reach a wide audience probably that way, unless all of you are really great networkers. Flock Notes, which is our parish email system. I know other parishes use different ones, but that's the idea. That goes out weekly, and we can get a listing in there, and we can link from that listing to the flyer or whatever with the other links to learn more about the program. We do email invitations to special, what I could call special interest groups in our church. So if we're doing something that we think St. Vincent de Paul would be interested in, particularly because of the population that they're serving, we'll, do special invitations to that ministry or to Loaves and Fishes, always to our Faith in Action group, because there are people who have different interests in that group too. And they, some will attend the faith and racial justice, some will attend immigration, some would attend, different kinds of different topical areas. The parish bulletin, we put it in there. That's your most, in my mind, your most limited ability to be able to communicate the depth of the program, because you only get a blurb, a little space to do so. But there are people who really don't look at email and don't want to be on the parish website that we attract from the bulletin. And they will usually be also those who want to talk to somebody before they commit. The parish website, we use that. Meg's wonderful monthly newsletter, we get it in there. And then we do email invitations to Faith in Action alum and at other parishes. And I could just say network at other parishes, but some of our Faith in Action members have spread out, and we have some at St. Bonaventure, we have some at Christ the King. We'll now have some at St. Mary's because they're being part of the Faith and Racial Justice series. I'm honestly not sure how they saw our advertisement from the ones from St. Mary's, but they did, and they're with us, and they're wonderful participants. So I try to get it out to, people that we know. If we've had people who have participated in other JustFaith programs, like Peace Lutheran participated with us on one, I'll send the information to them, so they know what we're doing if they want to participate again. They're actually right now pretty linked up with St. Joan of Arc, which makes a lot of sense because they're much geographically closer. So those are the main ways that we get the information out. I will mention something else that I didn't put in here because I wasn't thinking our original program. And that is when we were recruiting, and we also aren't doing it virtually, but when we were recruiting for the original JustFaith program, one of the things that we would do would be, the other thing is mass announcements. We would do testimonials. So people who had been through who had just completed the Just Faith original Catholic program, somebody would come to each Mass and would, after the homily, they'd get, 3 to 5 minutes to talk about their experience of Just Faith. And that was always a great opportunity for other parishioners to hear about the program from somebody that they might personally know. And it usually, attracted interest from others. So that was one additional thing that we would do. And then for the original program, the other thing that we used to do was we would hold an information night. And we would have, one time we tried doing a short mock version of what it's like to be in a Just Faith group. I don't really think that we need to do that anymore, because I think the Just Faith videos are really good at showing what that looks like, and it's shorter and more effective. But the information night was useful because people could come and they could talk to graduates and learn about what they might be signing up for. And again, remember when we were doing this, when we were recruiting for people and saying, you're going to be going through this for 24 to 30 weeks, depending on, what time we started the program. Doing an information night is not a bad thing. You can have material available. You can kind of give them a sense of what they're going to get themselves involved in. I'll pause. Questions? Additional comments, Meg, or anyone else?
Nancy, this is Mary Turgison again. A point of clarification for me. I hear your Faith in Action and Just Faith. Is Faith in Action a result of Just Faith, or are these two different groups, or how does that work?
No, after we used Just Faith material, the Just Faith modules, as our education vehicle for our Faith in Action ministry.
Okay.
Our Faith in Action ministry's mission is to educate and to advocate on social justice issues. And so the education portion of what we have done, we've traditionally used the Just Faith materials because they're pretty much the best that we have found up to this point. We may use other things in the future. Just Faith did come out of, Faith in Action did come out of Just Faith. When we formed the Faith in Action ministry, it was made up of 99% Just Faith graduates. But we changed the name because it was confusing talking about Just Faith ministry and talking about Just Faith modules. So that's why we made that distinction. So when I talk about Just Faith, it's the classes that we're recruiting for. Just Faith, Faith in Action is the ministry that is the horsepower behind offering the classes.
Okay, thank you.
But you don't have to have taken Just Faith to be in Faith in Action.
What did you say, Meg?
You do not have to have taken Just Faith to become a member of Faith in Action.
No.
I'm just clarifying that, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like similar for us. We have a social justice committee,
Yes.
And most of the social justice committee is on the Just Faith, in the Just Faith group.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Yes.
If I could just throw in a few other things, this is all pre-COVID, but this is ideal and ambitious. I'm just giving you historical background that at St. John Vianney as well, when the graduates, I really don't like that word, but I don't know what else to come up with. People who have completed a program, there was a small blessing at a Mass when graduates completed the program, so that it was a public way of acknowledging their work these many weeks. And that too can be very compelling. And Mary mentioned you're going to have a town hall talking about things. So I'm just saying, I've always encouraged at those blessings by the priest that even have at St. John Vianney, if you were to ask all the graduates to stand up, it was quite impressive, because at any given mass, there could have been another 20 or 30 people in the pews. And I think it's just good for people in the parish to see this. We just had our confirmande presented Sunday at St. Columba. And I was thinking to myself, this is a sort of thing that should be made public as well. It's something that the parish should be aware of your time and commitment. So it's just, I'm planting the seed for later. That is a recruitment idea. And then, Nancy, they had tables out in front of the church. All these Just Faith grads did the testimonies and had a table out there and that kind of thing. And I realize right now we don't have that, but that might come to fruition in the future.
Yeah, and I would think of the blessing was kind of a blessing and sending forth.
Yeah.
To do the work.
Right.
That we had just been spending 24 weeks learning about. So.
Yep, that's a better description. It is.
Well, it was both.
Yeah.
So.
I like what we do with Yarsay, Kenneth, and Pentecost.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, now go do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it was, as Meg says, that was a good visual that people had a sense of, because again, a lot of people knew people who had gone through it. And that's why I say personal invitation. A lot of our people who came when we were doing, every year we were doing the original faith, the original Just Faith program, came from personal invitations from people who had been through it the year before. And those groups typically were much smaller than what we get for these Just Matter, the subject specific programs. So, I mean, you would probably have 8 to 10 people in a Just Faith original program, where we'll have 30 that'll sign up for a Just Matters program for 8 weeks. So, but it's all of that is set in time. I mean, in today's world, if we were starting again, I don't know what we'd have with that. So that was just our experience over time. Okay, so any other questions?
Nancy?
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about what you just said, please. You said that you might have 30 in a Just Matters session. Are all 30 of those people in the same group, or is that multiple groups?
When we did immigration, we did it as, we've done 2 Just Matters modules like that, and we've done it as a full group.
Okay.
And we just break up. We use a lot of breakups. And both of those were done in person. So in Zoom, I have no problem with a 30 or person group. It's really easy, and using the breakout rooms and stuff, it works really well, much easier actually than even in person. But part of the reason that we did that with the larger groups was because we didn't have, we were fighting for space. When you're live, you have to get a room to be able to hold these things in and those kinds of things. And having more than one session would have been difficult, and getting multiple rooms of space was difficult. So it was really more of the logistics of the parish and all of the other activities that were going on that had as much influence, as well as having to have twice as many facilitators.
Right. I was just wondering how the dynamics worked with the way the modules are set up in a large group.
It worked out fine. You just have to think your way through it. You can't just follow exactly what's in the booklet because it's designed for 8 to 12 people.
Right.
So you just have to think about, okay, so does this discussion make sense? Can we do it as a full group, and will we have enough time? Will everybody have a chance to say something? If not, then, we'd break into 2 groups, and then you'd do it that way. But, a lot of it also had to do with, most of the stuff now, in the old days, everything was paper. It was DVDs, not even DVDs, it was actually cartridges that we used, and TVs. So you could actually, that was easier to have more of. Now we have, even with the Just Faith, there's so much that's on YouTube, that's on, that you need to have that someone who can run the media. And we didn't have spaces in our parish where we could have multiple sessions that had that media that we needed. So that also, if we're watching a video together, that's easy to do as a full group. Then you can break up into small groups, put people, different corners of the room, and they can have smaller group discussions. So you just have to figure out the logistics. But like I say, with Zoom, I find it much easier to do the larger group.
Nancy, I have a question. With 30 people, was there any attrition? It sounds like you kept that group together.
There's always some attrition. We probably had, 35 people who signed up for the group. And we probably 5 or so of them, didn't make it through. They attended the first or second couple and decided it wasn't for them or whatever, or never showed up at all. So there's always some attrition, but by and large, if they make it through 2 sessions, you usually have them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so then for signups, like Meg said, in the old days, we used to stand in the back of church and have tables, or over in our faith formation and have tables. Nowadays, we do by Flock Notes has a sign up facility, which we've used, or we use Sign Up Genie. We've found Sign Up Genie to be easier than Flock Notes, but either one of them, or whatever else you have, there's a zillion of these things available to use. But people like to, if they're looking at it on email particularly, they like to be able, because you have the link right there to sign up. If they're really moved and want to do it, they want to do it right away. And they don't want to have to be going somewhere else. So we have the link to whatever we're using for the sign up, but they can just put in their name and information that we need, and they're done and then they wait to hear, from us to show up. So that seems to be work for us. That works, or in our parish, that works really well. We do a lot of things other than what we're doing, also using sign up. I'll call it Sign Up Genie because that's what we use the most, for things like winter nights, when we had winter nights for signing up for that, or if we're doing a youth thing that, the youth families are used to doing that. So it's become pretty normal. But we always have other means for those people who don't want to be involved in the technology that much. And so we'll always have contacts that they can email or they can phone. We always put an email and a phone number, at least one. We usually have 2 people. Increases the number of people that they might recognize the name and feel comfortable calling. And then for once we have participants, they've signed up, then we always do welcome emails to them. At some times when we've had smaller groups, we've had divided up and done phone calls. But again, in today's world, trying to get somebody on the phone is almost impossible. So that became we were trying to be very welcoming, but it turned out that you ended up just leaving a voicemail anyway. So the email seemed to work just as well. We get them registered on the JustFaith website, so they have access to their material. When we started with Zoom, we actually offered a Zoom training for any participants who were not familiar with Zoom. This was at the beginning of the pandemic. Now I think probably everybody who is going to use Zoom is familiar with it, but we gave them, we made available a training that we did personally so that they'd feel comfortable. And then all of these programs start out with a retreat, and it's usually a different format, as you guys know, than your regular weekly sessions. So we usually give them a special email for the retreat. And then on a weekly basis, I put out an email which reminds them, because I know we go through it in class, but by that time, things are not necessarily sticking, and they also have it in their packet, but we try to make it as easy as possible for them. And I summarize what the pre-work is for the next week and any other important information that they need to know, along with each week giving them, even though the link doesn't change, it just is easy for them if I just include that link in the email, so that when they pull up that email, they can easily get to the session. And then I also use that email to provide additional resources. So if I happen to know that something is going on related to the class that we're taking, then I'll put that information in there. Or if somebody's recommended a book and I'll put that in there, or whatever it happens to be. I try to keep it to, no more than 3, because you're already doing a lot of work. But people liked that. They liked to know, because there were a lot of Zoom things that were going on, and they could, if they had the time, they could plug into a speaker or to something else that was related to our class. So that's how I use that email to communicate with the participants and remind them what they need to do each week. So that's
Okay, well, thank you so very much, Nancy. We really appreciate it. And so now I think this group has to decide on action steps. So what are we going to do next? So again, thank you so much. I mean, if you want to jump off now, you might have other things that you want to do.
I'll be happy to.
So thank you for your time. I did record this. Actually, I can stop.